Hi, Eduardo. Thank you so much for helping my project. Could you say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Nathan. Thanks for inviting me. So as me, I work as a software engineer at Meta. So I come from Mexico, been living in the US for 6 months, and really fan of space. Other than not super technical, but love like everything around it. I follow a few Twitter accounts on it. So
What got you interested in space?
where did I got it?
Yeah, how did you first get interested?
Oh, I don't know. I think I've seen the news about the space shuttle since I was a kid, and like the Hubble, more recently like with the Curiosity in Mars, James Webb Space Telescope. Like this is something that's been constantly like I constantly since I was a kid I constantly see the news. So I believe it's something that I've been just being fed through all my life. Most recently, I believe since SpaceX started doing some pretty interesting work, I started to get more into it. Mainly from 2016 to present, I've been like following a few Twitter accounts about it, so I get like constant updates nowadays. So yeah, I would say mainly all of my life, but like the past 5 years, I've been like an amateur fan of what's going on in the space industry.
Yeah, I've had the same experience too. I was really excited about space in like high school and middle school, and then the internet took off, and that kind of dominated my career. And then like you said, just like in the past 5 years, SpaceX and what they've been doing has just been you know uh, kind of revived my interest as well.
Yeah, and like even it's super exciting that SpaceX is like not the only company. Like there's now like a whole ecosystems around it. So like it's pretty exciting to be interested in space right now. So yeah, definitely something that I will be following my whole life now, I guess.
When I graduated from high school, it was 1994, and the internet was just taking off. That's the year that Netscape web browser became available. I think Amazon just got started a little bit after that. Google got started a few years after that. And right now it feels the same way in space. Like now is like the internet age of space. I was wondering what you think about that analogy.
Uh it I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, for a long time, like only NASA, Roscosmos, like these space agencies from the state were like the only ones doing interesting work, doing like the actual flights and all of that. And like right now, it's like a boom. Like suddenly you have Amazon with Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, like and like other small companies like building rockets and these stuff into space, talking space mining. So I totally agree. And like now with future like private space shuttles, and like we also have India, China, Europe, Russia. Like it seems like people is getting. I mean, I guess like after a long time, like the how they we sent a man to the moon, and there was like a long break after that. Like after I believe that was in like 69, 70 something, and like after we sent a man to the moon, it was like a long break from space, and now we're again talking about going to the moon. Elon Musk talking about going to Mars in 2026. Like it definitely feels like a boom age. Like yeah, like internet 2000s for sure.
Um, yeah, you mentioned about us going back to the moon. Did When did you find out that we were planning to go back to the moon? Do you remember when and how you found out about it?
So I remember a long, like 10 years ago, something like that, NASA had the initial Artemis plan. Uh, and that I believe that was like 2010. Like I must have read about it on some magazine. My mom used to have like these magazines about like a lot of subjects, and space was also a common feature. So I must have read about it or on Wikipedia, somewhere like that. Uh, then I believe Artemis got like a little delayed and delayed and delayed. It's been a delayed project, but after that, then I knew about the plans to now also involve like private companies. Now with Jeff Bezos, Musk, like also doing supporting group for going to Mars. So yeah, I would say I've known about it since I believe Artemis got announced like in 2012, 11, something like that, like the getaway projects. But yeah, I don't know the exact date, but I think it's been a long time when they announced the plan to go back to the moon and then Mars.
Yeah, but I mean that's good. You know, most people I talk to about it, they don't even know we're going to the moon. They're
Yeah.
just I tell them.
Yeah, no, I'm into space, and I read a lot about it. Yeah, I'm just don't know like all the math and like all physics, but I definitely read a lot about all other stuff.
So what do you think about us going to the moon?
I think it's exciting and it's a necessary step. Like if we ever plan to go into Mars, Jupiter's, like the asteroids, and even outside of the solar system, we need to live in space. And like right now, the space station, while good enough, like we people live in the space station, and it allows us to like do some experiments. Like the moon would allow us to actually live like in a establish ourselves a foothold in like an actual external body, and like establish something long term, because like again ISS was for 20 years and we have extended the lifespan of IIS, but it's not going to be forever. So I think like going to the moon will allow us to establish a foothold in a space object, and then will allow us to do a lot of science, because we don't know about like we don't know a lot about like long-term prospects of a human. Like how does a human body behaves after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years in space? Like we don't have that research now. So I think like the moon would allow us to do a lot of research into how will we move to Mars, to Venus, to Jupiter, to the moons of Saturn. So I think it's a necessary and a step that's been long overdue.
When you look at the future of humanity, say 200 years from now, what does it look like to you? Do we have people living on the moon and on Mars and other places, or are we still here on the Earth?
Definitely living on the moon and Mars. I wouldn't say if we will have figured out long-term living. Like I mean, I'm thinking for sure we will allow people to go to Mars and be there like for 4, 5, 10 years, like do some work, come back probably, because I'm not sure if we will have figured out like all the biology stuff to allow a human to live long term in 200 years. And you know, like nowadays, like everything is like exploding. Like biology is exploding, like AI is exploding. So to be honest, I don't think. I mean, I think like even looking 50 years into the future will be like it's unclear, because like science just leapfrogs in huge ways. So yeah, I mean, if we experience exponential growth and some technology that will allow us to live long term, we will definitely be living in Mars. But other than that, if not, I would expect that in 200 years at least we will be able to go there, spend a few years, and go back to the Earth if we haven't figured out long term living.
Yeah, it's really funny to think about. In the late 1990s, we had this huge project to sequence the human genome. And then, you know, if you look like 100 years ago, we didn't even know DNA existed.
Yeah, and I read that there's a machine that just announced for $200 to get your genome. So it's like that was exponential growth. So again, if something like that happens on long-term living for humans, for sure. I mean, we could be living in Mars, but I agree that it's a lot of people say, you know, Mars is like Antarctica but worse and like 6 months away from Earth. So I think that's also like how many people would like to live in Mars. Like there's a lot of questions that we have to figure out.
I've been thinking about that too. And I think some people might prefer the natural difficulties of Mars over the human difficulties of Earth.
True. That's true. I mean, there's always someone ready for a challenge, and like Mars is the kind of challenge that a lot of people would be excited about. I mean, if I could travel to Mars, I would, for for sure.
Would you consider living the rest of your life there?
Ooh, that's a tough sell. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would need to like know what's the purpose. I mean, if it's like if it's an impactful work, I mean, if I will gonna be doing impactful work that will be like leave an impact on humanity, I mean, I would consider it. But like right now, yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, now imagine 200 years in the future. There is a person in high school in history class doing a history project for whatever reason about the 2020s. What do you think will be worth remembering about this decade in 200 years?
uh, I think definitely like the explosion in commercial aerospace. Like I believe it started on the 2010s, but I believe the 2020s will be the decade where commercial aerospace will explode and will actually enable us to like send private satellites, space tourism, space hope like the beginnings of space mining are there. Like I think the 2020s will be remembered like the time where like people and private companies started to go into space and like the government took a backseat to the space career race.
Uh, I think just like the 1990s, that maybe the commercialization of the internet, even though it existed in the 80s,
Yeah,
but only.
yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, Elon Musk really allowed people to think, okay, you don't need $2 billion to build a rocket. So yeah, that really allowed a lot of people to think, okay, we can do this.
Yeah, now you have worldwide internet, high-speed internet available through Starlink.
Yeah,
Even
yeah, right. A friend just got it in Mexico, and it's been life changer for him.
that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, you could live anywhere, like in the middle of the woods,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
be just as connected as you are in a city.
yeah, that's true. And I think this is like only the first one of many potential applications that like space in like the private space industry will bring to us. And like we're just like at the beginning of an explosion in a lot of applications for space industry.
Well, Eduardo, those were the questions I had, but I see this as a time capsule for people to look back 200 years from now to kind of get a, understand all the different perspectives about this transformational time. Is there something else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover?
Uh, I, I don't know. I mean, I guess I think it's a really exciting time to be around. Hope maybe in 200 years they will look back and see at the current space like, oh, when they couldn't even figure out how to send people to Mars. But I believe like for us in the present, it's so exciting to be here and experience so many advances in like in space, technology, AI, biology. So yeah, I think at least for me, it's a super exciting time to be around, and I'm really looking forward to see what I will see in my lifetime.
Me too. I think it's going to be amazing. And hopefully, if Steven's successful at his work, we live way longer.
Yeah. I think the same thing. Hopefully, hopefully they can figure that out as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Eduardo. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Nice to talk to you.
Have a good night.
It's same for you. Bye.
Bye.